I stand beneath your sun, your moon. The night would pass, my darling, soon. The wild goes by, but wait, stand still. They'll chase you down, but wouldn't kill. The grey seems grayer in your eyes, the bright shade of your bluest light. You say everything, everything, everything's just perfect. Everything, everything, everything's fine. You say everything, everything, everything's just perfect. Everything, everything, everything's fine. From day to day, I see it more up in the clouds, down on your floor. How fleeting was what we once had. Our tears, the rain, your heavy blood. You say everything, everything, everything's just perfect. Everything, everything, everything's fine. You say everything, everything, everything's just perfect. Everything, everything, everything's fine. Everything's perfect. Everything's fine. Everything's perfect. Everything's fine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar hosted by Multilingual. We're super excited to be here. First of all, I'm going to introduce you a little bit to our topic today, leveraging your digital presence. And after that, I will introduce my distinguished guests. If you can't be found, you don't exist. That's the reality we live in today. So if you haven't invested in your digital presence until now, you basically have zero choice any longer. Your online presence consists of much more than just your website. We all think that the website is super important, but it also includes all of your social media platforms. In the new virtual reality that we live in now, we tend to build our relationships face to face. We are all in different lockdowns, or at least most of us are now working from home, voluntarily or not. But what people find about you and your company online will help them now to determine if you are a reliable business partner or not. This is true not only for your company, but also for your personal brand. Statistics show that up to 60% of a buying decision has already been made by the time a potential buyer approaches a vendor. So if they can't find any information about you, they won't probably buy from you either. So this will be a panel discussion with 2, not 3, amazing panelists. We had announced a third person on the panel, but she couldn't, unfortunately, attend today. But we will discuss implications and opportunities, how to maintain your personal integrity in the social environment, and at the same time put yourself out there to attract more business. It's not too late. If you haven't started your journey yet, it's not too late to start your digital journey. And I hope this conversation will help you to take the first steps and feel excited about all the new opportunities that it will bring to you and hopefully also to your company. Before I introduce my guests, some of you might know them already. Let's hear it from today's sponsor.
Tool to connect with your customers across channels. To successfully implement it, you need to work with local experts who have the experience of a particular culture. They are best suited to help you identify the cultural norms and expectations in each region. All globalization is ultimately local, and there's no substitute for human judgment and input to achieve the right words and subtext for effective global social media. Does it seem a little overwhelming? Lionbridge can help.
Thank you very much. So if you haven't figured that one out yet, it's Marjolein Groth-Niveling, who is not with us today from Multilingual. It would have been super interesting to hear her story because our host, Multilingual, which used to be a traditional printed magazine, has gone through an amazing digital journey over the last year, and Marjolein is very much part of that journey. So we have to save that to another conversation. Instead, I have two fellow Swedes with me today, Ansi and Tess, and I wanted to start with introducing Tess Whitty with Swedish Translation Services. We met the first time, I think it was 2011, at a conference. We love conferencing when we can. It was the Swedish Association for Professional Translators, SFÖ for short. And a year later, she was a speaker at one of my conferences in Copenhagen. And it's been amazing to follow the journey with you, Tess. And we have met in many exciting places. Last time, I think it was Palm Springs at the ATA conference a year and a half ago,
Yes.
approximately. And we have Ansi Kroll, a person that I met via social media. I found an amazing tweet. I'm a notorious Twitterer. Anyone who knows me can confirm that. And I read a tweet, and I remember I sent you a direct message and say, hey, this is amazing. Would you like to come and speak at one of my conferences? And so you did at a conference in Malmö in 2015, perhaps, if I remember that correctly. But that's how I know you from a personal point of view. But I would like you to introduce yourselves to our audience. Tess, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you. So my name is Tess Whitty. My background is in marketing. I studied international marketing and business communication. But I've also studied a lot of languages. So it wasn't until we moved to the United States in 2001 that I started to look at other options. After researching translation for a bit, and I decided that I can work from home and become a translator. So I did, because I had little kids at home then. And I benefited a lot from my marketing background in building my translation business. So in about 2010, I started giving presentations and workshops on marketing for freelance translators or freelance linguists. And I have done that ever since. I have a podcast, which is very popular in the industry. I have published over 260 episodes. I've published 2 books. I have courses and workshops and webinars, all to help other translators market their businesses, which is my passion project. And I have been online, I think, ever since I could. One of the first things I did was to create a website back in 2003.
That was a little bit more cumbersome than what it is today, right?
It is.
Thank you very much, Tess. Ansi.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ansi Krol, and I've been in communication and marketing plus 25 years or something. I started off at Ericsson when they were going digital in the mid-90s. And I was also digital brand manager for that brand for a while. I'm based in Sweden. I work globally, and I have a background where I've been both an entrepreneur, building my own agencies and companies within communication and marketing, as well as running and heading other people's firms as well. Today, I'm an intrapreneur at Intrado Digital Media. And, I'm super passionate about the digital presence. The fact that you gave that story on how we met speaks volumes. I started my digital journey during university when things was very new. I studied in the US because in Sweden at the universities, it was still very much print. So I have that background as well, and film and video and more classical kind of traditional communication. And I just believe that there are so many opportunities. So I support our clients to be successful with their communications by leveraging data and insights together with tech. Because to me, insights on the data-driven part of it is key. And we didn't even mention search in the intro, so we're going to get back to that as well.
That's good. Thank you very much. And I totally forgot to introduce myself, as if everyone knows me. So my name is Anne-Marie Colliander Lind, and I have been in the localization industry ever since I was born. That's how it feels, at least 30 years now. And the thing is that I tend to introduce myself as the person who's been forever in the industry, but never translated anything but my own PowerPoint presentation. So I have been in marketing, I've been doing sales, I've been on the tech side, I've been on the business side, I've been on the research side. And since 10 years now, more or less, I'm an independent consultant assisting primarily translation and interpretation companies in their growth journey or any other challenges they might have. So I see myself as a business coach and a mentor for companies and company owners. So enough said about me. Let's talk about the digital presence. We are forced into it, or we love it. It's a love-hate relationship. And I was, as I said, an early adopter on some of these medias. But I think we have a lot of newcomers now because we have no choice. We need to be digital, we need to be present, we need to have an appearance there. But do we have to be everywhere? That's my first question to my panelists. And I'm looking at Tess, you can't tell, but I am. Do you think you have to be everywhere? Is that what digital presence is all about?
No, I don't think so. And it's impossible to have a good presence everywhere. I know, Anne-Marie, we were active on Twitter, or we tweeted between each other a lot several years ago. And you probably have noticed that I am basically not as active on Twitter anymore as I used to be. So what I tell my students and what I've done myself, for me, my digital presence has been very important. I don't live where my clients live usually. And most of my clients, I have found them online and through my digital presence. So it's very important. And I think you should be active where your clients are active. If that's what your goal is with your digital presence. I use almost all social media only for my business. Some, of course, Facebook and Instagram privately too, but most of them I use for my business. And I think you should focus, especially if you're new, you should focus on one, maximum two social media platforms. I'm not talking websites anymore. Websites are a given, I think. I'm talking social media. Focus on one or two and be really thorough and good and social on these platforms, because that's what they are. And I have noticed when I go through phases of being more active on one platform versus another, I notice it takes a month or two, or sometimes not even that, but I notice the difference right away in engagement and contacts and potential clients reaching out. So first of all, focus on where your clients hang out if you want a social presence, and go. But it also needs to be a platform that you enjoy.
I think
So
that is a super important comment. If you don't like it, it's very
yeah,
hard to engage with it. And so, did you
yes.
want to comment on that too?
No, I mean, I can just echo that. It's so important to find the passion, because if you don't enjoy it, it will show. And understanding where you have your target group is so important, and also exploring what will have them engage, because often when people start off, it becomes like a megaphone and they just keep on saying what they want to have said. But once you start to understand what value you can bring to anyone in your target group and what they want to engage with, because you will see that, just as Tess says, it will show in the data. So always follow your data. So once you figure that one out, then you can start building momentum with your communications. And I can only echo the fact that don't try to be everywhere, because it is time consuming. I remember back in the day in the 90s when everybody was building web pages, and they would say that technology was so great because it was for free. It didn't cost anything. And then they realized that building a really good web page actually cost money, and you couldn't have your kids do it every time. And then social media came along, and it was the same argument, oh, it's so great, it's for free. And everybody, jumped on it and realized that it takes a bit of effort, and you still need to have like your communication and marketing plan, in front of you, and understand what messaging you should be going with. But it's also fun because you can explore. It's that kind of, it's social. So you will get direct feedback if you're doing it in a good way, or if you need to tweak something.
I think you mentioned something that is really, really important here. And that's what I stress when I talk to my clients or anyone who asks my advice, is that you need to have a strategy. You need to have a strategy for your business, for your goals, for everything you do. And a strategy is never as good as it can't be changed. I mean, if you realize that your strategy doesn't work, you need to change it and tweak it, as you said. And I believe also that if you choose to not be on a certain media, it's good to be there. And the strategy, even if the strategy is not to be on Instagram, I think it's good to mark your spot by having an account. But the one and only message there is to say, hey, I'm glad you found me here on Instagram, but I'm more active on LinkedIn. Here's my profile.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't really know where your customer might find you. Or is that a bad strategy, Tess? Would you argue against that?
No, I think if you have that message, then it works, but not if you just create a profile and then forget about it. So, and I also wanted to point out that the platform you choose, because it's so important that you like it, is because you should consider it a giant social networking meeting. And think of it that way. You don't go into in a social networking meeting just to hand out business cards and say, here I am, this is me. You go there to interact and ask questions. And so that should be at the back of your intentions and strategy, to to understand that it's social and that you need to interact and ask questions and be
true.
polite.
Yeah. So someone said that there's no right way to have it. To say that there is a right way of doing social media is to say that there is a right way of having a conversation. And there isn't really, but there are certain unwritten rules on how you have a conversation. And that's one of them. Be polite and be nice.
Mm-hmm.
My father always said, if you don't have anything nice to say, maybe you shouldn't say something at all.
Mm-hmm.
But
if I can just, because I think this is really interesting when it comes to like being social digitally, and especially with people we don't know. I'm quite a lot on LinkedIn. I'm not as active right now because I've just, workload and everything, once again, it is time consuming. But one thing that I do still try to put time into is grow my network and try to find people that I both can benefit from, where they can bring value to me and I can learn from them, as well as if I feel that I should have this person in my network because we could collaborate or something like that. But it's amazing to me that so many people connect on LinkedIn. So they tap me on the shoulder and say, could we connect? And then when I look at their profile and say, yeah, why not? We connect. And I don't hear a word. If you go to a conference and you connect with somebody, we shake hands, we say hello, we do the quick introduction. Who are you? Who am I? We need to do that on LinkedIn too. That's the whole point of growing a network, because if we don't get to know each other, we won't understand how that value can come. And that's one thing that I really want everybody to start thinking about, how often we connect without saying, thank you for connecting. This is me. This is what I can give to you. If you have any questions, please reach out. The worst thing we can do is connect and then send a prefixed message with a cell. So there are some do's and don'ts, but I think that social connection, because I learned so much from my network on LinkedIn, and I try to have a wide network on LinkedIn, so I don't end up in a cluster where we all know each other and it's the same people all over and over and over again. Like, to get that fresh ideas and sort of input. And of course, I use it for sales.
Obviously, yes, because that's the ultimate goal here. I mean, if you want to grow your business, you need to find customers. And if you want to find customers, when you find customers, you need to be able to sell to them. But and I must say, I really like this politeness and the engagement on LinkedIn. I'm trying to follow my own advice on that, but the warning clock is always this, because you have a moment and you go to LinkedIn and you find interesting people and you say, connect. Oh no, because there you cannot have the option of adding a personal note. So that's a no-go. Don't do that.
If you do, if they connect, then just send them a message afterwards.
Yes, exactly.
So, and so I have a question for you, because you are good at data. So I am struggling with the algorithm on LinkedIn because I have two different audiences and I don't want to turn people down. There was a time when I said, oh, on LinkedIn, I focus on my translation business. If you are a translator, please connect with me here. But I have noticed that it is important that I also speak to that audience on LinkedIn. So I'm kind of torn because I know the algorithm works. I don't want to create this little pool either. Do you have any advice on how to do that?
Well, I think that, it all comes down to content, because if you deliver content to several target groups, hopefully you will be able, and there are tricks of using hashtags and, interacting with people that you want to engage with. So one thing is the type of content that you put out, but it's also a matter of who you connect with and also who you engage with. A lot of people forget that the algorithm will check who you are interacting with. So you need to be active. It's not about how many posts you put in. Well, we can speak volumes on all the different types we should be doing to keep the I call the algorithm for the cookie monster, because it's like you always have to feed it. And that's the stress, I think, that I struggle with anyways.
Yes.
But also to interact with the different audiences and comment and sort of put your point across, because that will also weigh into how you are being pushed out into your network. But it is difficult when you have multiple messaging. It's like me. I have two specialities in my role today. I work a lot with webcasting and virtual events. And I work a lot with data and insights for PR and communication and marketing. Those are related, but when I give tips and tricks on one end, it will be very focused on what should we think about when we do these type of activities. And then on the other end, it can be, how do I pick my best KPIs? And I sort of I go with the flow. I try to put things out there, and I can see in my data what audience is engaging with what content. So I just try to push that as much as possible, and just sort of, and then, video, then I get emails, I get other types of engagement. If I do just a regular image and a post, it's just comments or likes. So there is a lot to learn on each platform, not only LinkedIn. It's the same with Twitter.
Yeah.
So
sorry.
Oh, sorry, Tess.
I'm on the right track then because the feed is very cluttered, that I click on the hashtags. I follow the hashtags and try to comment on those.
Hashtags and companies you want to engage with, reaching out to people that you think are thought leaders, and sort of so that you get, because it's a matter of having those interesting conversations. And I always try to think about, am I bringing value by doing this? Not, me. Because if I bring value,
it should be you.
It will be me. So it's, to just have I always talk about, don't see it as like a one-to-one relation.
Yeah.
It's like just moving the pieces to win the game.
Yes.
So I wanted to break that into the conversation about, you now, Ansi, you represent the company. Of course, so do I, Test as well. But we also have this balance between the company and me, the brand me. Now, I think for freelancers, often me and the brand is sort of interconnected. But I have a tendency to engage more with people than with brands. How do you, as for your company, how can you leverage the company's digital presence on medias like, well, say Twitter and LinkedIn, both of them the same? Any advice on that? Any tweaks you can do to have more engagement?
Well, I think that, if we look at data and my experience with clients when they've been doing this, we often see that the people behind the company is actually gaining more followers and sort of having more engagement and everything. So it's a matter of making these accounts work together. I think that you can never, as a company, it all depends. If you're your own company, you usually have two accounts and you try to put things out from both and try to get some movement in that. But if you're with we're a big company, so we have quite a lot of content going out, and I think, and you can't pressure anyone to share company content. That has to come from that person. My experience is that you usually get a lot more out of it if employees engage in their own way when they feel like it, because that's when they show their passion, what they think was really good. Because I've had clients who had these policies where people should be like resharing or liking or commenting on all the stuff that the client does or that the company does. And it just creates these clusters. So I think that there should be more trust in the employees and see them as an asset, and be happy when they share. And also realize that it's not all personality types in a company that will do that. Not all will be on social media. So it's a balance. It's easier when it's an entrepreneur with their own company because they stay in control in a different way. But large companies, there are some really good examples where they've managed to get their employees to bloom in their own sense without always sharing company information, yet sharing the company culture, the story, that really resonates. And I know from my clients' perspective that it gives them sales.
I want to add, if you as a company encourage your employees to like and comment on social media posts, the algorithm tweaks it so that thinks that they don't only want to hear from each other instead of bringing it out there. Of course, they should share and like and comment, but it can backfire if you encourage your employees to like and comment on your own post, because then the algorithm will think that they want to hear more from each other.
Exactly, and it becomes a cluster, and also. One has to sort of think about, depending on how new you are to a platform, and all these, now we're talking a lot about LinkedIn just because it is such a good professional network where a lot of sales and sort of marketing is happening today. But also it's a matter of sort of understanding that anything we engage with, so all these threads that people start, like, somebody puts out a piece of content and says, anyone who thinks like this, please comment. The only thing that's happening is that is building for the algorithm for that person. So it's like you also have to think about what I engage with will impact what I see. Yes. What the algorithm thinks that I like. It's not certain that it will give me anything. And more of these platforms are putting in different types of tweaks to make sure that this sort of feeding loop of just liking each other and building an audience would be beneficiary. So, and it's the same, looking at like one of the new platforms right now, Clubhouse, where we saw in the beginning weeks of Clubhouse how these sort of clusters of people just started liking each other because a lot of followers on Clubhouse would make you draw big audiences into the rooms. But that doesn't mean that it's valuable content that you will be listening to. So it is. I think that you have to just stay true to your sort of both your own business and your own message, but also how do I bring value to the target group that I want to reach, and it takes time.
Do you know, Ansi? I mean, we're talking a little bit about quality versus quantity, right? So if I have an audience, I want to know that it's the right audience. It's the people that want to listen to what I have to say. They are interested in what I can share with them. And in the earlier days of social media, especially, it was all of these, buying followers. And then they tweaked the algorithm so that the bought followers, they don't count as much as other. Do people buy followers nowadays? Do you know? I lost track on that.
Yeah, I don't think, I have no idea if people still are buying followers. I wouldn't be surprised because, if you don't know, you might fall into that trap. But I wouldn't recommend anyone to do it. The systems are so advanced today. Yeah. But we do audits when we work with clients where we look at how many, like on a Twitter account, if you have loads and loads and loads of followers, especially like the really large accounts, it's quite interesting to see how many are active and engaged and actually on the platform, not robots, not fake accounts and such. So, there are ways to verify that you have actual followers.
And And it's all about engagement these days. If you buy followers, you won't create engagement.
No, that's so true. No, because it's funny when you see that there are no new players coming, especially into the I mean, I mostly operate in the language industry, and you see new players coming in. We know that this is a fairly small industry, and after only, a couple of months, a new player have 50,000 followers on Twitter. That's like, do we even have 50,000 people in this industry? And who else would be interested in following them? So yeah, I think people still do it, but we should keep in mind that the systems are much more clever than they were in the early days of social media. So we can't fool them anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's all about, what am I trying to get out of it? When I work with clients, we always talk about the first step, which is, what are the objectives? What are we trying to achieve here? Because only when we know that, we can set up a strategy and tactics, and we can measure towards that to make sure that not only, am I getting engagement? Am I getting likes or whatever I feel is important? But am I getting the right conversion? And I think that's being discussed way too little when it comes to, why am I doing this? Because it has to convert, otherwise it's not going to be worth the time. So it's important to sort of understand, okay, so what am I trying to do? And also then build that journey, build that message journey, so that there is a way to convert. Because if I just sit there and talk, but there is no call to action anywhere, if it's, am I driving traffic to my website? Am I trying to impact my search position so that I can be more easily found on Google? What am I trying to do? And then when we know that, we can start helping on what should you be doing and what tools should you be using.
Otherwise, it is just like many people think it is, a waste of time.
And this is what I heard a lot when I joined Twitter. I think it was 2009, and people said, "Oh my God, it's such a waste of time." But Twitter, to me, I mean, I think that the different media serves different purposes, and Twitter to me has always been like the radio. It can be constantly on in the background, but I'm not paying attention all the time. I'm listening for special lines or clues that will catch my interest, and then I pay attention for 5 minutes, and then I'm doing something else. Whilst a media like LinkedIn, I go there much more on purpose. I want to share something. I want to engage. I see an article. I read an article. I can spend an hour easily on LinkedIn browsing the content and engaging with my audience or with other people's audiences. And that's what really fascinates me, is how you can link to people that you otherwise would never reach, just because, how you are connected.
Can I comment on something on the chat? Because I just saw that we have a comment from Frederick that says he didn't realize that employees liking, commenting and sharing company posts was negative. I'm not saying it's negative, but it is a risk of ending up in a filter bubble. So it's quite common that when you post something, it's actually good to have people interact with that post early on. Because if it's liked and especially commenting, so that you get a dialogue, because that sort of rates higher, that will make that content fly, so to say. So it becomes shared with more people. But if it's the same people that like and comment and share your content every time, then we end up in that loop that Tess was talking about, and we have a filter bubble. So there we are, looking at each other's content, interacting with each other's content, and that's that. So that's why we're just saying, it's important to instead make sure, because if you engage with other people that you want to have engaged in your content, the fact that you engaged with them, it's more likely that they will then see your post, that's going to be pushed forward. Because we have to be very frank, very little of what we post ends up in front of somebody's screen. There is so much content. So you really have to build up that audience over time on any platform. And Twitter is like super quick, and therefore, hashtags on Twitter is very important.
You have to build engagement, but not at any cost, or
that's very nicely put. And I mean, hashtags. I'm just assuming the entire audience know exactly everything about hashtags, and I think hashtags are super important. And knowing your hashtags, the industry hashtags is one thing, but I sense that some people tend to use them for people who are totally clueless. I mean, we are using L10N, XL8, I9N, whatever abbreviations we use for hashtags in our industry. And that's cool if I'm selling to another translation industry peer, but it's not cool if I'm trying to reach an audience outside of my own interests. So what's your take on the hashtags, Ansi?
Well, I think that you have to do your research to be able to reach your audience. It's very easy for me to stand here and say, oh, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, because I've got tech platforms for everything. So, I have social media monitoring where I listen to topics, and there I get on a display in my dashboard exactly what hashtags are relevant for that topic. But you can do that manually as well if you don't have the tech. But it's just, you have to understand, if I want to take a position in a certain market landscape, as you would if it wasn't digital as well, what do I need to do? What do I need to understand? What does it look like? What's the conversation? What is resonating? What drives dialogue and buzz? And today there are quite a lot of good tech to help you on that journey. So I think it's important that you understand what hashtags to use. You shouldn't overuse hashtags. We don't want posts that has one sentence and then 30 hashtags, and it's like, what was this about? So it's like always a balance, but using the right ones, and also not be afraid to actually establish one. It's like a bit rough in the beginning when nobody is following it, but it is amazing if it starts flying and that hashtag is, people relate that to you. So to do that for events, for instance, and they can live on for a long time, depending on how you treat them. So there are some fun things and ideas that you can do with hashtags as well, also to bring them into the physical space.
And also to test them, because I mean, you don't want to be associated with something that might be totally different. And as many of you might know, I'm very much engaged with Local. And when we started more actively be on social media, we realized that Local is for people with dreadlocks and those kinds of hair. And so we couldn't only use the hashtag Local because we had tons of followers that were following that tag. So that's why we always added numbers to the conferences, so Local Worldwide with a certain number. And so that's super interesting. But we have a comment here, and just for the audience to know, we will have questions and answers, 30 minutes of them from the audience. So we would love to have your questions, and you can add them in the Q&A. But we are also trying to monitor the comments. And we have one here from Christina Jagman, who says, my big challenge is exactly that, finding the right audience for my content. I don't feel comfortable with tagging people I am not in touch with people who I am not personally in touch with. How do I solve that? Can you just tag anyone? Can I say, I don't know, a celebrity's name just to draw more attention to my posts? What's the rule here? What do you think, Ansi?
Yes, I can understand the. It's kind of interesting that people would do that even. I think it's super important that if you tag somebody, either it's because you want to boost them and acknowledge them that they've done something great and you're super impressed, but that has to be very genuine and sort of transparent. You can't tag people just to bring in your own brand. People see through that all the time. So be careful with that, I think. And then, of course, you can definitely, if you've I see people when they listen to a good podcast, or if they see something like really good in content that you recommend that's one thing. But just, casually bring somebody into a post, no, like that, I wouldn't recommend that at all.
I think it has to be relevant. For example, like when Anne-Marie shared our panel in advance on LinkedIn, and then she can tag us because we're involved. Right? It has to be very relevant. But I wanted to bring back a question to Ansi that I saw in the chat too, back to the tags, hashtags, not the tags, the hashtags.
Yes.
Because I'm speaking for freelancers here and we don't have those big data systems behind us. How do we find the hashtags that work?
You can always manually search in the platforms. So you can always go in and sort of look around on hashtags that you think are relevant, and just see, is this what I'm looking for? And once you start looking at posts for one hashtag, you will also see if people are using other hashtags.
Yeah.
So it's just like a more manual way of doing it, but it's still, you can still do that to sort of understand what's relevant. And there are some, I'm just trying to see now, but there are some ways also to search on hashtags through Google and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, but I usually go to the platform because it can vary. On Instagram, certain hashtags are used in one way, and in LinkedIn another way, and Twitter a third way. So, but it's always interesting to see like what is used in a certain topic base, so that I get more options to choose from and see, is this the type of feed that I would like to be part of?
And I've noticed when you said not to add as many hashtags, it also differs on the different platforms. I have noticed that Instagram is notorious for the one sentence and 30 hashtags.
Yeah, but that's all about the image, right?
Yeah.
So and I think that's also, you sort of have to understand a bit more about the platform. But then it's also, I find it really, really interesting, since we work a lot with target groups and finding target groups for our clients and target group mapping, that it behaves in one way for one type of target group, in a different way for another target group. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're a millennial, you will post and interact and write and use emojis in one way. If you're Gen Z, it will be something totally different. So depending on who you're marketing to and what platform you're on, there are going to be sort of different rules. Yes. And I think that a lot of people we try to learn as we go, but just research. I think that we have to be curious and see it as something fun. As soon as something feels like, oh, this is way too time consuming, I can't be bothered, then it's probably not the right platform for you. So it has to be a bit of fun and curiosity, and just be able to try it.
Good. And I can recommend, if you go with quantity before quality, you can always use the hashtag Dogs of Twitter. I started a Twitter account just to test it for my dog, and she got 700 followers within 15 hours. And I didn't buy one single one of them. So that's just, if you want quantity, use that hashtag. Moving on a little bit, the private side, this is something that I'm sort of in my position struggle with a little bit, because I am a brand, I have my persona, and I have my private self. How do you feel about that gray zone? Where do you share private stuff, and where can you earn more presence or more followers by becoming more personal? And is there a line that you shouldn't cross? What do you think, Tess?
This is probably why I am most active for my business on social media. I don't think you should post anything that you don't want your grandmother to know or anybody else. I think even if you have a small sphere on one social media platform, it can still leak out. So don't post anything that you don't want the whole world to know, basically. And another thing that I think is important is to always Google yourself, because you can moderate what's out there a little bit. If you see something there, for example, a picture that you think, oh my God, I don't want that picture to be out there, you can have it removed. So does that
That's
answer your
very
question?
good. Yes, I think so. Yes. And again, I think also that coming back to the strategy, I often talk about strategies, and I think that is also important for your personal brand to have a strategy where you want to
Yes.
do what. So you can be private on Facebook and only have your closest friend, and then you can have your corporate side, and you can have anyone to join the conversation there. So you can have different strategies for the different platforms, right?
Definitely. And I mean, I think that I've been struggling a bit these last couple of weeks since Clubhouse came on, because at Clubhouse, you can link your Twitter account and your Instagram account. So those are the two platforms it links to. And I have a private Instagram account in my name, the one that everybody knows about. Where I have very few followers. It's a private account, and then I have an open account because I'm a gardening nerd. So that's where I post, all the stuff on the gardening I do, trying to understand how I can grow even more tomatoes next year, that kind of interesting stuff. And then you enter Clubhouse, and you go, oh, yeah. So the most natural thing would be to have me link my private account, because that has the right name, but it's closed. And it's closed for one reason only. And it's because I post pictures of my kids.
I have the same issue with Instagram. And I think I'm going to change my headline, because right now it says that I'm a translator and marketing trainer, but it's closed, and I actually keep it only for my people that I really know. I think I'm going to change the headline, because I have a private one and I have a public one. And I have a lot of requests from translators for my private one, because it's my name. But I would prefer if they use my public one, which is my marketing tips for translators. So it's an issue.
But it's kind of funny. I've actually, what I did eventually, and I've gone back and forth, so, but I haven't opened my private account. I actually decided, no, I'm going to connect my public Instagram account, because I am going into Clubhouse rooms on gardening. And that's actually now meant that I'm starting to get followers on my public Instagram account, because, there is a cluster in Clubhouse of, hobby gardeners, professional gardeners, lots of experts that share. So, it is what it is. I do get some business content on that Instagram account now, because I have other people as well that I interact with there. But it was just, the best way to do it for me right now. We'll see when the kids, as long as they're, they're not super young, they're 8 and 12, but I respect the fact that they don't want to be open. They don't have their own social media accounts either. So that's how we're going to keep it in this family for a bit. But that's why you have to sort of decide what's best for me, for us, and how do I want to do it. On Twitter, I'm most active on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Clubhouse right now. So that's how I do it. And I post occasionally on Facebook as well, but that's just because on Facebook, I have a broader network. It's also a private account, but I have a lot of business connections in that as well.
Same with me. Yes.
Yeah. And that is what happens over time. You might be business associates only in the beginning, and then you grow into a friendship, and then, so there is a gray zone you have to decide. But I think it's really important to underline that you need to be true to yourself, what feels comfortable for you. And as we talked about this, I mean, what you can expect from your employees to engage, it's the same thing. If you have people who don't want to be, you have to respect that. But I also I saw that in the comment here, that one thing about the tagging people, that if you are to, that person wrote that if I tag a person, I always ask their consent first before I do it. And I think that's a really nice way to do it. And I think that can also go alongside with if you run a business, that yeah, it would be great if I have 10 employees and they all look professional on LinkedIn, because you have a bigger chance that someone will find your company if you have your people on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But you have to ask their consent. And if they don't want to, that's okay. So I think it's this level of being authentic and true to yourself and do what you like.
Can I add something on this sort of being personal? Just a sort of anecdote. I had, it's many years now. I had an incident where a business meeting went terribly wrong. You know, things happen.
Online?
And no, it was a physical meeting many years ago, and we were doing. We were going through a report, an analysis report, an insights report that we had done, and it was totally misunderstood what we meant in a certain statement. And somebody took that very personally. And that's always hard when you work in analysis and insights, because people tend to feel like they're being graded, like, oh, it's a performance report. And it really wasn't. So for us, it was, just this has happened. This is what you look like in media. This is what we think are the opportunities and what you could do in social media. And we didn't think it would be such a big thing. But for an individual in that meeting, it was. And I felt terrible. This was somebody I really admired, respected. I knew this person was really good at her job. And she's fantastic. And I hurt her and I felt so bad. And I spoke to her afterwards. I spoke to lots of people afterwards. And it ended up that I actually felt like it was afterwards, I realized that this is interesting because we very rarely talk about mistakes we do at work. Because when I started analyzing this situation, I realized that if I had taken a few steps back, it was in a time period when I was super stressed at work, way too much to do. And I was just like rushing through, just trying to get everything done. But if I had taken a step back, I could have foreseen this. I could have done it differently, and I had to own it. I owned it to her, but I also decided to record a video and put it up on LinkedIn to talk about how difficult it is when you realize that you messed up. You messed up, you hurt somebody, and you had to ask for forgiveness. That video was so strong. It was so hard to do. I did it in one take because I thought if I tried to do it several times, it's not going to be, I just have to be authentic. So I did it in one take, put it up, and it had such a reaction in many ways. People were coming back to me and like, oh, are you getting burnt out? No, I wasn't. I was just stressed that week. People were like, oh my God, I wish more people would talk about mistakes they do. Fuck ups, if we can use that word. And now there are pods on this. There are, people write books on it. But to me, it was an eye opener that, and I haven't been that personal or shared that type of content again, but it was just so obvious to me that you have to stop and think. And so I think that we can be personal, but it has to be in a relevant context if you're going to put it out as something in the professional realm of your space.
Let me bring us back a little bit to the other medias. I mean, I know that we are all social media freaks here, but we still have that good old website and our blog. Are those times over? Can we close them down, or how do you see the interaction between the social media and the more static, which I mean, that is more static for most companies at least. How do you see that developing over?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, sure. Tess, please.
I think a website, if you go into the physical world and you have a store or a boutique, the website is that. And all the marketing and all the social media is just to bring people to your website, because that's where you can have your message, you own it on that website. And this is where you can bring them into your store, tell them about you more, and hopefully create a call to action, a click, a contact, and stuff like that. Social media is great, but it should all bring you back to, I think the social media, you have to have a storefront somewhere.
Yeah. Do you agree, Ansi?
I totally agree, and it's so true. And I think that most, especially smaller companies, and I know that from being one before being an entrepreneur, often forget that call to action. We tend to, once again, we put our storefront up, and we think that, oh, but I have a button at the side, contact me, or to book me as a speaker or something like that. But you really have to. Once again, follow the data. So are people coming here and interacting? How long are they staying on the page? Where are they going? How have I built it? Because there is an art form on building good pages, and they also build up the SEO, so that you show up on Google, that you have control of that, just as we spoke about earlier, not only as a personal brand, but also the company brand. And of course, it's all interconnected. It should be. You should link your social accounts to your websites and vice versa, because that builds the SEO as well. But that's the same with anything you do. Like, are you putting out press releases? You need to think about the whole ecosystem and how it works for you. Because if you do that, you will get much more conversion at the end. But just thinking that, somebody's going to read like a long text and then click on that button, probably not going to happen. So how do I need to create my website so that it becomes intriguing enough so people reach out? How do I make that happen? And once again, it just takes listening to all of the ecosystem, understanding what type of content. If you have a blog, what resonates in social media? So you should do an in-depth or do a video on YouTube or wherever you are, what channels you've chosen to build that, and then always connect it to, so you have that anchor of your website. So definitely.
And which leads me actually, because I'm monitoring the time here, which leads me to the fact that it all needs to be cohesive. It can be different, strategies can be different, but it needs to be cohesive. And it needs to confirm to your potential buyer what they think they already know about you and your company, so that they feel, wow, yeah, that's what I thought. I want to buy from them. So we are going to open up for questions. We have monitored a little bit in the chat, and we have the Q&A if you're on Zoom. If you are in any other media following us live on Facebook, we have assistants working with us, helping us to post your questions into the Q&A chat in Zoom. But before we do that, I will ask to give the audience another message from our sponsor.
This Q&A is brought to you by Lionbridge.
That was short and sweet. I thought it would be longer, but who am I? So let me open up. And I think the first question that I saw here was related to websites. So do you ever use AdWords? And if so, did you find it useful?
I have not used AdWords for my website, But I wanted to come back to the question about blogs and whether they are relevant still. So one way to increase your SEO and make people find your website is through blog posts. And I think it depends on the industry, but our industry, especially translators, still like to read sometimes instead of watching. I know personally, if somebody posts a video, I save it for later. But the blog post I can read through or skim through kind of quickly. So the website and the blog post are not dead. They have a function still.
Mhm.
I'm happy to talk about AdWords.
Yeah.
So I would say yes. Depending on what market you're in and what you're trying to sell. We do quite a lot of research where we also look into when it comes to like market approaches and strategies and tactics. And there is definitely markets and audiences that trigger really well when it comes to AdWords, but it's all about checking how much competition is it on the words that I want to then sort of market on? Is it going to be worth it? The good thing with Google is that you can put a cap on how much you spend. So you can try it out and see what happens with the traffic that I get when I use AdWords. Is it actually converting? Once again, not only driving traffic to a website, because it doesn't matter if you're paying heaps to get traffic to your website, but it's not converting. You know, it's like pouring water into a leaky bucket. So you have to make sure that the whole system works. But it can be very, very good. And I would just say, once again, be curious, get to know how to do it and try, but follow the data to see if it's the right tactic for you.
Very good advice.
I want to add, you have to also localize since we're in the localization business.
Yes.
I work a lot with localizing or transcreating ads these days, and you have to have somebody that knows SEO, that knows about negative keywords, that knows what you need to change in order to reach that audience and create engagement in that market with your ads.
So true. So true.
Excellent. So the next question is from Hans Pich, and I know that we knew that we were online, Hans, and that's why we talked our secret language before we went live. But you do have a question. What do you recommend to companies that want to use social media in different languages? Should it be done via a central account, or should each language get its own account? That's a very good question. And I always, Ansi, what do you think? Should we have that all mixed in the same account, or should we have language-specific streams?
I actually don't have a good answer for this one, because I've seen so many different strategy and tactics done, because there is a big problem with the fact that it takes time to build an audience for any account, no matter how big of a company you are and how big the interest is when it comes to your content. Because you always have to balance the fact that if you post on different languages in the same account, that it won't be relevant for the audience all the time. I would say that it also depends on what platform we're talking about, because, you know, with Twitter, I follow, I don't know how many, you know, a lot of accounts, and I don't read my feed. I usually go in and search on like a hashtag if I want to look at something on, or a person that I follow. So it becomes quite different on Twitter. But I would say that there is a good way to, if you want to localize, and I think you should. I mean, we do a lot of research on how messages and languages, how important they are for conversion. So it's super important to use the local language and the local tactics that apply for that country. Big differences. Oh, that's a different show. But also, when you market what you call dark social. I know it sounds really weird, but marketed content is called dark social. That's not something that shows up in your feed, but you can target it to your audience. Of course, you have to pay for this, but that also means that you know who's going to get it, and they can get it in their local language. So it doesn't disturb your feed. Instead, you can market that towards the right target group in the right language. So that's what I usually see my clients use, that they localize on the central account, but doing it in dark.
Tess, did you have anything to add to that?
No, only that I do think it's important that you speak in the language of your customers and target language. So if you are a company and can hire or employ people that can have an account in that in all your markets, I would recommend that. If you are a one-person company or a freelancer like I am, I recommend focusing on the language of your target audience and speak in that language.
And
I also think, can I just add one way to also get around it is to mark on your profile what languages you are speaking in. Mm-hmm. So, if you're multi, just put the flags in there so that people can say that, this person is going to be communicating in several languages. Then people know.
Yeah, I think that's a very smart idea. And also you can have different strategies depending. I mean, for in the language industry, a lot of the LSPs have two different strategies in how and to whom they are selling. So in the local market, you might be targeting anything from pizzerias to law firms to your local bank. And those would probably be more engaged with your social media if you then did that in Swedish in my case, or in Czech or whatever language. But on the international market, they are selling to other translation companies. So they become subcontractors within their own industries. So for that audience, they should probably stick to English, which is sort of the industry lingo that we have. But one thing that I would like to, if you haven't noticed already, on LinkedIn, on your professional profiles, you can have your profile in more than one language if you are comfortable in more than one language. And that is very good because that means that you will be found in searches in all of those different languages that you have your profile in. Don't do it in languages that you don't master, but that's a very simple way of multiplying your presence on LinkedIn to do it in more than one language. So that's for your personal profile. We have another question here from Maria asking, on social media, what type of content should we put out if we work with clients across different sectors and sizes? Good question. Who wants to go first? Who has the magic answer?
Should I start?
I don't have a magic answer. I think this is something you would have to research and see what your target audience is engaging with and find helpful and useful.
Ansi, a comment to that?
Yeah, well, I can only echo that because, I mean, it's all about what they feel relevant. And that is so hard to hear, right? Because you want to hear that, well, I have something to say and I want to put that across wherever where I'm trying to get business. But it's really that social interaction that you need to have happening. But it's just a matter of, I usually try to think about what are they going through? What am I going to bring that is going to bring value to them? So I always think about the client's client. Is there anything that I can do that will help them win deals and be more successful? Then I talk about that. And for me, that can vary quite a lot depending on if the client is in a certain industry or another industry. So I try to then find relevant case studies or tips and tricks that are relevant for that certain market. But then once again, the hashtags become super important because then I need to dive into their territory and their topic so that they can read what I'm talking about. Once again, research and understanding the data behind it, and then build content that is relevant and drives both your business but also your client's business.
Very good. I've been thinking a little bit also about, and I wanted to ask how you see that when people auto post from different medias into other medias. I mean, they all used to be different, but it's not only in the language industry that we have a constant merger situation where companies grow into one. That happens also on social media, as we know. So I find it quite, I don't know, irritating would be too strong of a word, but if you see a post and it says, look at this amazing, or I found something that was interesting, and that's posted from a private account and it goes automatically into Twitter. So you can't actually access that information. You can see it on Twitter as a tweet, but you can't really follow it, or it goes to paid content. So it's Washington Post, you have to have a subscription, so you can't read it because of that. Or if there's a picture and you don't see the picture on Twitter because it was posted somewhere else, it's a link to the picture. How do you balance that? Would you recommend to have these auto posts, everything goes into every media, or should you be more delicate in how and when and what you post where? What do you think, Ansi?
If I haven't seen the data, I couldn't tell you. I'm such a data nerd. I think that, it's what I see quite a lot. I've seen an increase, at least in my feed. I'm just speaking from my own experience, being on Twitter, that people are posting like LinkedIn posts more on Twitter. And I guess they do that to build the interest on LinkedIn, that they're trying to drive traffic to their profile and the content that they're posting there. I have no idea if that is successful without watching data. I'm not doing it on my own. I use those two platforms quite differently. I use Twitter much more. I actually use Twitter much more active. To me, I go on Twitter when I want to interact with tweet chats and sort of different communities that I'm part of, or if I want to follow a hashtag or something like that. So I don't really use it in that way. I might have to try just to see if the data tells me that that's a good idea. Now I see more connections between, since I'm getting more active on Clubhouse, how that drives traffic to my Twitter account, since that's linked. But I think that you really have to think about, why am I posting this? What am I hoping to get out of it? Once again, what's the objective? What's showing that it's working, and what's the call to action? What's going to happen with this?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's a good if it's, like you said, linking to closed content. But on the other hand, I do schedule posts on several social media at the same time, especially for my marketing training. But what you can do is I schedule it in Hootsuite, which is a scheduling tool, and you can see what it looks like on all the different social media you post it to then. So that way, I don't know if the instances
you can trim the times as well.
Sorry?
You can trim the times as well, so it doesn't have to post at the exact same second.
Yes.
Because you can have different posting times. So
yes,
and that's I think is a different thing, to post same content, like you say, marketing and stuff. I see that all the time. But the whole linking to a LinkedIn post, sometimes those auto sort of spread things can look really weird. So it's better to do like pure, like you say, a proper post for LinkedIn, for Twitter, and then just post it through a third party. So I agree.
Very good. So, and another thing that I have been, and I thought about topics for this conversation to see, do you think that there is a difference between how Now, this is an all women panel, so we cannot ask any man in the panel. But is there a difference, do you think, how women and men relate to the digital presence? Is there a female way and a male way?
I think so, just as it is how we interact in any social situation. We interact differently, and I think it's the same on social media. That said, I do communicate and socialize with both all kinds of genders online. But I do think that the interaction is different.
So do you actually have to build that into your strategy if you have a product or a service that is more geared towards? Do you need to behave differently, Ansi? Do you have data on that?
I would say yes, because, and it's not a matter of being digital. We're humans. So, and I think that there are so many studies that show that we communicate in different ways, we express ourselves in different ways, we have different body language and everything, and that ties into digital as well. And I wouldn't say that it's a matter of do I need to change my ways because I'm communicating to men? But more on, if I'm going to talk about a certain technical topic, and that would be linked to a more male audience, I don't care about it being male. I just want to be on topic. So I think that it's all a matter of just being relevant and understanding what words to use, what lingo to use, and sort of, it's like those social actions in real life too. But I definitely know of people in my network that have zoned in on only wanting female clients, because it becomes, then they know exactly how to run the messaging, and they get to know that audience really, really well. And the same with on the other end, somebody that says, no, I work better with men, so I'm targeting these type of industries, and this is how I'm going to work. So I would say yes, because we're humans, there is a difference. But I think that a lot of the sort of coding in language and how we socialize is very similar, that we're seeing in the workspace, or when we socialize on events and stuff.
If you would sit down with a male colleague next to you, we are all females, and you would both open TikTok or Instagram Reels, you would be surprised how different the content is that you get in those. That's just one proof of how the algorithm even tailors the content to different.
Oh yeah. So it's different worlds.
Yeah. The different medias, I mean, what I kind of dislike now is that they are all becoming so alike. It used to be Instagram and stories. That was wonderful. Then suddenly stories were also on Facebook. Now we have fleets on Twitter. How do you feel about that? Is that an issue, or is it good so that we can do everything the same on all the different platforms, or was it better in the good old days?
I guess it's good if you only focus on one platform, you can get it all from that platform. But I think it's mostly the social media companies who are thinking like, oh, they're doing that, we need to do that too.
What about you, Ansi?
Well, I think that this one is really difficult, because I'm more curious, and I haven't read up on that, on how these functionalities are actually being used. Because it's one thing that the social platforms get envious of each other and starts, providing the same functionality, but will it fly? That's the difference. Will we use it? Will it lead to something? So I'm sort of, it is a problem in the sense that if the algorithm starts like now, with LinkedIn as well, you need to post all these different content types, and you have to do this and that, and, because, to feed the cookie monster. It puts a pressure on anyone on that platform, and it can be quite overwhelming. But I'm thinking that eventually, I think it will clean itself out, because if we don't like it and interact with it, they will not be able to make money on it. Because, I mean, let's be frank, I mean, they try to sell ads, they try to make us sort of, we pay in our time with content and ads, and if that doesn't work, eventually they will take it out, because that will take attention off from the platform. So we'll see what happens with all these different ones. But I think that, as soon as it is a hype, I mean, now we have Clubhouse that everybody talks about, and all of a sudden all the other platforms are also going to have like an audio only, just to sort of deliver on that. So I think that I've been in digital for such a long time. I kind of just step back as like, here we go again, and then we'll see.
That's sort of what I feel about Clubhouse. I'm very new to Clubhouse. Sometimes I turn it on as a radio in the background, but I'm not super active. But that was my thing. Oh no, here we go again.
But I think what I really, let's talk about a little bit about Clubhouse. I mean, what I like about Clubhouse is, because the language industry is such a small pond, and we tend to talk to each other, the same people, the same influences. And now there are so many of us building our personal brands. We podcasts. I mean, I love podcasts in the beginning. Disclaimer here, Tess, I love your podcast, but I'm not a big podcast consumer. And now there are tons of podcasts geared towards our industry, in our industry. And what I really like now in the beginning, in the early days of Clubhouse, is that I get to listen in to a lot of different industries that I otherwise never pay attention to. In the marketing clubs or the different sections that you can follow. And that to me is fascinating. And I hope that we as an industry can learn from other industries, because we're all great, but I do think that we have areas where we can make improvements. So, and as you said, Anzi, I mean, Facebook was there immediately announcing that we have something similar. We are going to do this as well.
Yeah, and it's, I kind of like, even though it's kind of brilliant that the fact that they take out the video and go audio only, and they make it like a radio show, and instead of calling into a radio show, you can ask to get up on stage and ask your questions. So the technology is quite simple, actually. But the scalability is hard, and to be able to do that. But so it's an interesting platform, but it's also it quickly turns into different bubbles. So even though you can move around and go into all these rooms, I get a feeling that people tend to sort of end up now in the same rooms, talking to the same people. And I've spoken with quite a lot of people on Clubhouse with the fact that the mix of people is exciting, that you can have, as it started, with entrepreneurs and VCAP, coming onto this platform and sort of finding alliances. And now we're seeing other sort of people finding each other. But will we do anything different? Will we act? Because it's only when we act and something good comes out of these collaboration sort of platforms, no matter if it's Clubhouse or Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, will we make the world a little bit better? Because I think it's very driven out of that, because it's from the startup scene, and also a lot in sustainability. So it's interesting to follow, but I like it. I think it's a fun, very sort of naked way when it's audio only. When I don't have to care about a camera, I can be in my pajamas and I can clean the kitchen while I listen. It's just something refreshing.
I know, and that's why I have it on. But what I was questioning in the beginning is it's by invitation only.
Yeah, during the beta.
Okay.
That will most likely change, and that has happened with other medias as well. That it's by invitation only in the beginning. And by the way, if anyone who listens now got super curious about Clubhouse, I do have few invitations. So if you send me a nice message, I might share.
And I think that we have to be aware that it is beta. It's still only deployed for iPhones. And they're not on Android yet, so we've only seen the beginning. I mean, it has been around for a few months, and it's been very much talked about the last month or two. But it's still just in its cradle. It's just starting off.
And it's funny, you said a couple of minutes ago, but I mean, after all, we are all humans. And when you describe what is happening now on Clubhouse, that we tend to go to the same club, we tend to talk to the same people. Isn't that exactly what we are doing in a social networking environment too? We tend to go to the people we know. If if you are at a conference, a physical conference, you can network with whoever you want. There are 200 people in the room. You tend to go to the people that you know, and that's where you hang out, and that's where you stay. So I think,
I think that's why you have to push yourself and be that curious person that taps somebody on the shoulder and says hello and get to know them, because that's how you create new business, right? Because if you stay in the same pool and you think that you will always renew whatever you're trying to sell, like that contract, you will not grow. So to get scalability, we need to look somewhere else. We need to learn from others, and we need to reach out and say, hey, I want to get to know you. And be that vulnerable. And of course, it's super scary because somebody could actually shut the door on you. Most don't. Most step back and say, oh, hi, great. And you start talking. Yeah. I have so many new conversations on LinkedIn where I do most of my networking. But it's all about taking that first step. Don't sit and wait for somebody else to take it.
Very good. We are almost running out of time, and I just wanted to, before we close the room, I know this has been recorded, so if you had to drop out early or if you came in late, there is a second chance or third, or you can watch it or listen to it as many times as you want. Few last words, Tess, if we have any newbies on the digital journey here in the audience, what would be your top advice to give to them? Where should they start?
They should start with thinking about what they want to achieve with the social presence, and then once they know that, they can pick a platform that they think they can achieve this on. So for me, or for fellow linguists, it is think about where your not only your colleagues, but where your clients hang out. Go to that platform, see if they're active, if they're groups, if they're hashtags and stuff, and create a presence and start interacting there. And enjoy it. Have some fun. Don't think of it as another time waste. It will be a time waste if you don't have in the back of the head what you want to achieve all the time.
Ansi?
Well, pretty much the same. I always say, start with listen, listen, listen. If you start listening to conversations where you feel that this is a topic where I should have a position, just listen to it. What's being said? What are people reacting to? How can I tap into that? Because then you can move on sort of setting, just as Tess said, your objectives and your strategic and your tactics. But do your research. So listen, listen, listen. That's my starting point always.
Yeah, you need to go out and spy for a while, and then you can interact. Wonderful. I want to say thank you, Ansi and Tess. It was wonderful to have you here on this webinar today. I also would like to express my appreciation to Multilingual, who invited me to host this panel. And I hope to see many of you soon again, either online in the digital world or who knows, maybe even physically soon. So
Yes.
until we meet again, stay healthy, wash your hands, and have fun.
Thank you,
Bye for
Anne-Marie.
now.
Thank you.
Oh my mind. Listen, girl, I believe in the feeling. It's like something I can't explain, 'cause it's just different. I'll be damned if I can't see what your loving does for me. And it seems that I can't find the words to say. It ain't no sin, so won't you come in and we can begin to get to know each other. We don't have to rush, we can take it slow. Through your eyes I see your soul. Baby, let me take you to a higher place. Ooh, baby, let's get closer. Won't you come here, darling? You don't have to worry, 'cause I got you, yeah. Take off all your clothes. Don't have to be afraid. I'll be good to you. Promise I'll be good. Oh my darling, yeah. Oh baby, girl, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you're with me. Now that you're here, I've got to let you know. You're so precious, you're a dream, you're something special. What I need, oh baby, got to give you all of me. I wanna be everything. If you're ready, let me show you just how much you mean to me. Woo! Baby, let's get closer. Won't you come here, darling? You don't have to worry, 'cause I got